The Evermore podcast is now sponsored by WFST Total Compliance. WFST provides fire safety requirements UK-wide to prepare you and your employees should the worst happen. Do what you do best and visit wfst.co.uk today. Enjoy the episode.
Let's go!
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to the Evermore YouTube channel. It's Wednesday night. The Evermore podcast is back with you. A very special good evening as well. Before I introduce the lads to someone very special. This person is over 138 years old and fucking beat the Mackhams last night and stopped them going to Wembley. Good evening to you, Luton Town. Come on, you hatters. Absolutely brilliant. Get in the lads. I had to get that out early doors, boys. Sorry about that. Any Sunderland fans watching, I don't care. Love it. Suck it. Have that. I put it the wrong way. Right, so we'll get stuck in. I'll introduce the lads tonight. I've got the human stat machine Mark is with me, and he's back. The man with a voice like butter. The Welsh wizard is back in the house. Di, how are we doing, guys? Oh, you mute, Di. The butter voice is gone.
Oh, there you go. It's been that long. I've forgotten how to use a computer. I've had an absolute nightmare. I'm good, mate. How are you doing?
Excellent, mate. Excellent, mate. It's good to have you back in the house, Welsh wizard. It really is. And
good to be
back.
Get
stuck in. We've got loads to cover tonight. We're a little bit of nerves about Champions League. We're going to cover all about transfer. Mark has been working overtime on the stat computer, so you're about to be blown away with his stats, much better than Sky Sports. And as always, as I mentioned at the start, if you haven't already and you're new to the channel, consider subscribing. We'd love you to come and join us. Click that button. We're over 3,400 subs now. So we've had loads of new subs. Clicking the button, generally after me having a rant in that vein in the side of my neck popping out about Talk Sport or something like that. But we do a weekly podcast as well, so that's worth checking out. It's tonight and Mondays. So come and join us. Loads of Newcastle United content. And we're live as always tonight. There's loads of you jumping the comments already, because I think we were a little bit late coming on. We've got BT is always in early doors. Good to see you, BT. You weren't as early as the guy on Monday. When was he in Mark? About 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
2 o'clock in the afternoon, yeah. That was dedication for you.
Absolutely. We've got Rogers in the house as well. We've also got Mr. Forster is already in there as well. He says he's in bed dying of man flu, 17 hours to put himself right. Oh, Lee, I think that's you worrying yourself sick, mate. That's what that is. And we've got Ash in the comments as well. Mellow greetings, one and all. Good to see you too, Ash. We'll get stuck right in then, lads. So the first thing we're going to talk about is the Champions League slipping. I'll cover you first on this one, Dyer. It couldn't really be a worse time for us to have a little bit of a hiccup in terms of the way we're playing, or maybe our top players, putting in match-winning performances. I mean, what a difference a couple of weeks make, when we were battered Spurs and West Ham, we were already singing the Champions League tune and checking the passports, weren't we, But how do you feel about things now, mate, with Liverpool creeping up closer and closer? Do you think we're going to still do it, or are you getting a little bit concerned?
I'm a little bit concerned. I'm probably in the minority in the sense that I'm not really that fussed if we get Champions League. I appreciate all the positive financial stuff it can do for us and the doors it opens and all of that stuff. I think we would get murdered in the Champions League, if I'm totally honest. And I'd rather have a year in the Europa League where I think we would play well and do well, and I think we'd have a half a chance of enjoying that. And going far in it as well, I think, to be totally honest. So I'm not that bothered. I think it would be a shame, having said that, to go through all of this and miss out and then not get across the line. Not really that fussed about the Champions League, but more in terms of kind of what we've deserved after this season. I think to get to a cup final and to be in the top four for such a big part of the season, I think it would be a shame from that perspective for us not to do it. But I'm not that nervous. I think it'll come, be it this season or next season. I really think it'll happen. I think the misnomer of Spurs are shit and Man United are on an off year and Liverpool are shit and Chelsea are shit. We're talking about 71 points gets us in the Champions League. That would have got us in the Champions League, I think, all but 2 of the last 10 seasons, I think. So I think that total is well within us. And this is not a kind of freak year. So, yeah, I'm not too concerned. I'm just kind of enjoying the ride for what it is. And I fully expect us to win tomorrow. I fully expect us to beat Leicester. And fuck the Scousers,
Now that is brilliant. We've already upset the Mackhams. Shut the Scousers in there too. Yeah. We're going all at it tonight.
Yeah, I'll go for the Manx next.
leave the Scots alone. Come on, I've got one foot in that camp there. I'm going to get told off if you do that. Mate. Don't do that too much. But it's a fair shout, Mark, isn't it? I mean, Lee's pulling up the same hiccup. 8 wins in our last 11, man. Liverpool have 7, Man U have 6. So I think, retrospectively, Lee's probably got a point. That fever you're having, Lee, is making you see a bit clearer, mate. We'll have to get you ill on the podcast more often. You can have some of that weird cough medicine that Dyer had when he was high as a kite. That one episode, I can't remember what it was.
Oh, I
was
forgot
it Cavonia?
Yeah.
No wonder you forgot about it, mate. You were in the sky with Lucy and the diamonds that episode, mate. You were away with the mixer. It was great podcasting highlights. But Mark, just coming to you on that, I mean, I've been dead positive about the Champions League as well. I really have, in terms of all the weeks that have gone by. But I'm starting to get a little bit concerned. Just it's more about the game management. I mean, that game against Arsenal and the game against Leeds are 2 very different games, 2 very different opponents. But I just felt against Arsenal, we got suckered in a little bit. We got too wound up. The lads lost a little bit of their focus, a little bit of that composure. And then against Leeds, I just felt that we took our foot off the gas, as you and I both said on the Monday. These 2 games, as Dyer rightly says at home, are massive games, Mark, against Brighton and Leicester. We've got to win them. I'm in my mind, I'm saying we are going to win them, but I've just got some doubts now, mate. I'm just starting to get a bit concerned.
Yeah, I think pre-Leeds game, I think we all really expected, or I certainly expected that to be that to be 3 points, and it looked like it was going to happen. And like we said, it took a foot off the gas. I think probably right to have the nerves kick in if the expectation is Champions League. But as Dyer said, is it really criminal if you don't? I get the argument that you've sat in that position for so long now that it seems like a deflation if you don't make it. But if you said at the beginning of the season, look, you'll make Europe this season, I think 99.9% of Newcastle fans would snap your hands off for it. But these games aren't going to be easy. I think the Leicester one should all done be 3 points. Brighton are a completely different kettle of fish, aren't they? They've had some odd results. I mean, look at they got absolutely creamed a couple of weeks ago, and then go on and put a performance like they did against Arsenal. So if you come up against Brighton that played Everton, then you're on for 3 points. If they come up with the same team that played against Arsenal, then it's going to be a hell of a game. But at home with the crowd behind, you look to say 3 points from that, 3 points from Leicester, and then it doesn't matter about anything else.
We've got to be in the bag. As Stephen says there, that you're on mute there, actually. I was going to come in a second anyway, but as Stephen says there, if last summer we'd been told cup final plus definite top 6 and 3 games to go over Champions League, we would all been over the moon. I don't know if that's what you were going to add there, Dai, as well. You're still on mute. I think. Oh, you're off mute now.
Yeah, no, pretty much that was what I was going to add. I think the context is a big part of this, and I think Lee has said it in the comments here as well. I get the Arsenal game was a big game. I actually thought we played really, really well in that game, and I think there was a bit of an overreaction to the outcome. I didn't also think we were that bad against Leeds. We had patches where we were poor, but I think it was a middle part of the game. We controlled the game well. But Lee is absolutely spot on. St. James is under the lights. Absolutely different kettle of fish. And I think there'll be, a lot of beer drank tomorrow. And I think everyone will be having a good time. And I think it'll really be bouncing tomorrow night. I think everyone knows what's on the line here. For me, I think if we win that game, I think we're home and hosed, and I think everyone will be bang up for it. I think this is our second cup final basically. I think win tomorrow night, and I think it's party time.
Yeah, definitely as well. I mean, George is saying their worst case, even if we lose or draw at Brighton, we're going to hump Leicester and Chelsea. I mean, Chelsea look like they couldn't beat an egg at the minute, really, to be fair. They're fucking woeful, aren't they? Under Fat Frank, who is the second coming of the Baron of Bacon. I might nickname him the Prince of Pork, I think, Mark, because he's getting that bad. Big Frank might get that nickname off me, I think. But Carl's saying we needed 7 from 4 games and we're on track. I mean, I think one thing you've got to say about Eddie Howe and Mad Dog Tyndall, by the way, we'll forget the Mad Dog love. But I think one thing you got to say about Eddie Howe is when he has to get the lads up and ready for it, he seems to do it. He seems to be able to do it. Those big games that we need to turn up and win. I mean, the Carabao Cup final aside, obviously, which was, I think, a very different kettle of fish. I think we were just totally out kind of thought by a much more experienced Manchester United side that day. I just don't think we were ready. As Di says there, maybe we're not ready for Champions League. We certainly weren't ready for a Carabao Cup final against serial winners like them. But I think going back to these two games, these two home games, I think Eddie is going to get the lads in the right mindset, focused, ready for it. I mean, I think I'm just having these little moments. I've been talking about my mates today who's really pessimistic, and he's got in here. I think I'm like, oh no, we're gonna get beat. But I just, it's a concern that if we make silly mistakes in these games, maybe it'll come back and bite us on the arse. But I'd like to think, as you say, Di, as well. I'd like to think that we're going to have enough to get through these two games. Mark, you just said it there. I mean, Brighton are a bit streaky at times. What concerns me a bit about I know we're going to come on to Brighton at the end of it, Mark, but what concerns me is I think, Bruno's been getting some hammer recently, and I'm not going to turn on Bruno because Bruno's a huge reason as to why we're where we are, no doubt about that. But it's clear, and I know Di's got something to say about this, which we'll come on to that, and it also dovetails into transfers, but it's clear we dropped the bollock in January, not getting any more midfield cover, Mark, with Bruno having this injury. And I think the fatigue is showing on Bruno. And what worries me about that Brighton midfield with McAllister in there as well, and is it Caicedo, with them two in there, that's a good midfield. And if they turn up ready to rock and Bruno's off his game a bit, that concerns me a bit, mate.
Yeah, I mean, it could. I mean, I think Bruno got a few comments at the weekend where they said he was, he'd had a poor game. I don't particularly think he was poor. He was a lot quieter than probably normal, but
yeah,
he used the ball well. His passing wasn't quite as sharp and as crisp as you normally expect, but he did his normal job well. He's had another week away from the injury that he was carrying previously, so it's hopefully another week of a bit more fitness, a little bit more crispness in his play. And again, you come out in front of that crowd as a night game. Everybody's had a few. It's going to be loud. He's going to be playing up to them. So I think you probably get a little bit more than you saw away at Ellen Road. I just think the stage is set for him to have that sort of performance, regardless of the opposition.
Speaking of having a few, Di, what are you supping? Ash says in the comments. What is that?
I got a mate of mine, his old man, has got a shitload of a cases of Bitburger. So every time I do everything for him in work, he always brings me a little 4-pack of Bitburger as a little thank you. So I've got I'm not working tomorrow. It's a Dutch bank holiday tomorrow, so I'm starting a long weekend this weekend. So I'm starting it with a nice, refreshing, strong continental lager.
Brilliant. So, in the words of the Fast Show, by the end of this episode, Di will be very, very drunk.
Very, very drunk.
Very, very drunk, which would be brilliant. We'll be keeping an eye on. Should have a drunk meter marker just as it goes, the episode goes, and see if the words.
By the end of the episode, I'll hold up all of my cans that I've drunk during the episode.
You'd be like Stone Cold Steve Austin, just smashing it together at one point. Just getting them back. Absolutely brilliant. But yeah, Asher said you're making them want to drink 2 years sober.
Sorry, mate. Sorry, mate. I've not got. I've not even got a non-alcoholic one here for you, mate. Sorry. Next time. He
really hasn't. But you would expect nothing less from this Welsh wizard, mate. He's always got a little tipple on hand, to be fair, which is good. So what is actually George has asked the question, what are we supping? I'm on a shanty. It's basically just Peroni. I'm going to be really sad, George, and tell you I'm on green tea. That's how shit I am.
I've got a glass of water.
Green tea.
Yeah. Spot the dads on the podcast. Green tea and water, and the other guy lashing the beer.
Absolutely pathetic.
Exactly.
I feel like we've let the side down here, haven't we?
We really have.
You're
a rock and roll star, Di. A rock and roll star, mate, as Oasis would say. How many more songs can I get into this episode? Loads. Set me a challenge. But go back to that midfield, Di, just to bring you in, because I know this is something you've raised loads of times in our chat group as well. I think that midfield oversight, so to speak, of not replacing Shelvey, I think is really starting to show, certainly with the injuries to Longstaff and Bruno carrying this knock. And the questions are, is Anderson ready or not ready or whatever? Do you know what I mean? I know you've been a big advocate of the fact that we kind of maybe made a mistake there, mate, in that midfield berth.
Yeah, I think we did, and I don't think there's any secret to that. I think a lot of people have that view. I think I've said again in our chat, I've said on here before, I really don't think that Anderson's ready. I don't think he's. I agree, Ash. What a fan.
Sorry, Ash. Sorry, Ash.
I really don't think Anderson is good enough. Not, I think he's technically quite good. I think he's not quick enough. But I think ultimately the big thing for me here is that we've got to learn from this as we go forward now. I think, yes, we know we've made a mistake. We don't need to hammer home that point. I think we've got to make sure that we grow as we go here. And I think we've got to recognize that this mistake has been made. I still think Anthony Gordon will come good. I think a good preseason with Eddie and the lads, and I still think he'll be a good player next year. Did we need the extra winger? I would have said at the time, yes, we did. But I also think that in hindsight, the midfielder could have come in, the central midfielder should have come in instead. But, do you know, we all say that we're all experts in hindsight, aren't we? I think the reality of the situation is, if you look at how much we've grown in the last 12 months, there was obviously going to be mistakes. There are obviously going to be things that we didn't quite get right. And I think this is one of those things. You know, we're going to talk about transfers in a sec. I think that central midfield area is our biggest area that we need to address. Looking at it for tomorrow, I think you're right. You know, we talked about Caicedo in there. McAllister's a very good player in midfield. I still think we've got more for them. I think Bruno is an exceptionally talented footballer. I think he will run the game tomorrow. I think he'll be vociferous. I think Joe Linton will be running around the place, smashing into people. I think everyone's going to be so up for it tomorrow. Like I say, I'm not concerned. I know Lee is, you know, pretending he's got man flu when he's just crying in bed because he's concerned about this. And I know PK
that is it.
PK's got the shivers himself as well about the whole thing. But I really think there's so much to be confident about tomorrow. And I think we've got to enjoy this. I think this is what we want as football fans, right? We want the end of seasons to matter and mean something, and this is what it is. So we've got to enjoy it. We've got to be confident. We've got to be positive, and I've no doubt we're gonna do them tomorrow.
Wonderfully put. I need to get some of those cans for the beautiful use of the word vociferous for midfield, mate. That is stupendous, isn't it, Mark? What a vocabulary the man has shown tonight. It's great to have him back. Lee's in the comments there. We have missed you, mate. It's just been shite since you've not been here, mate. not as articulately, gymnastics as you, mate. But Lee said Isak to start central. I fully agree with that, Lee. 100%. We'll cover the Brighton game at the end and how we think probably that'll go. But yeah, ASM, Miggy, Joe, Bruno, Willock, midfield. Wilson and Duncan, you asked after 65 minutes. That's a fair shout. We had the chat about this, Mark, didn't we? I think on what's going on, that we felt that Isak would be better. I think somebody put in the comments, we thought Isak would be better in this game because of his speed and his ability to get in through the lines behind Brighton, whereas Wilson, Dunk will have that all day long. You know, a bit like when he plays against Tyrone Mings and guys like that. They want to fight, they want to scrap them, they want to pull his shirt. Whereas Isak running at them from deep, they would shit themselves, they wouldn't know what to do with the Dunk, and etc.
Yeah, I think it's just it's something very different to the norm. I think he gives absolutely. He's going to run with the ball. He's going to drop a little deeper and then look to turn, and his pace is frightening for them. Look, they're exceptional defenders. That don't get us wrong, but I think he could have a field day against them. Really, I'm not saying he's going to score 6 goals, but he could really run them ragged. And if he's given the support from either side, and I like the idea of Maxi starting because Brighton have struggled for right backs over recent weeks where they've played. They played Caicedo down at right back and stuff. So up against a more inexperienced fullback, Maxi could have fun as well. So that could be a way to go. I quite like that idea.
Absolutely. To comment there from Roger saying Murphy may not be fit. He's talking about maybe Anderson starting as well. And just some of the comments there as well. I'm not sure they know what vociferous means then. If George says, does it mean loud? And Ash says, wasn't that the finger with the vampire with the long fingers? Which is so fantastic. You wouldn't fancy picking your nose with them, would you, Ash? You'd take your brain.
Oh, that is brilliant. Ash's comment has got me there. That is a very good one.
He loves it. He's great with the comments, as Ash. So we've got Lee saying that tenner on Duncan Webster to make 100 passes each. Got to be worth the flutter. Give that to PK, Lee. You know he loves the flutter. Yeah, he is the gambling man, is PK. I would nearly say he's the rain man of the group, but it's not. That's Mark's job. And that's a beautiful segue into the transfers, Mark, because your stats are flying. There you go. I'm back with the segues. Thank you, Di. So yeah, obviously loads of transfers have been talked about with the club. I mean, again, it all depends on kind of where we're going to finish. We're talking about the Champions League, is it Europa League? It's definitely going to be one of the two. I think because of our points talk, we are definitely going to finish in either a Champions League position or Europa League position. And as the likes of Craig Hope said, there was two different pots in terms of what we were going to draw for. Now, I think some of these players will blend into both pots and some of them will only sit into the Champions League pot. But we're going to start at the back in terms of players linked, and we're just going to have a little look at the stats, how they line up, and just see what we think, whether this would be a good move or not. So starting at the back, Mark, I'll take this one to start with, as I am the token Scot on the podcast tonight. It's a Kieran Tierney. That's one for Carl in the comments. He loves a bit of Kieran Tierney at left back. One for you, Carl. I'm waiting for the comments to come in. But yeah, so he's been linked massively to Newcastle, I think ever since the takeover's happened, really. And he's fell out of favour at Arsenal. He's not really getting a great deal of game time ever since the signs Zinchenko. I think one thing with Tierney, you can see there, he's 25 still. He's at a really good peak age. He's a very, very good player. There's Carl already. He's in there straight away. He's not happy. He's a very good footballer. He's got Champions League experience as well. He's captained his country. You can see there in terms of how he stacks up against Dan Burn. We all know Dan Burn isn't a left back by trade. He's done a great job there. I'm not starting on him, Di. Don't get upset yet. He's done a very good job at left back as Dan Burn. But Kieran Tierney is a proper left back. And just looking back at the stats, Mark, per 90 minutes, I'll bring you in for this. You've done all the work on this. But his stats kind of per 90 minutes for Tierney, if you want us just to move on to the other slide, you can see kind of where his talents lie in that position.
Yeah, I mean, look, let's go back to the first one. I mean, if you look at it, you can clearly see the difference between the two. You can tell that Dan Burn is very much a defensive fullback at the moment rather than anything else. Kieran Tierney will give you an awful lot going forward. But yeah, if you look at him overall, now this is based against fullbacks across the top 5 leagues. So that's Premier League, La Liga, Bundesliga, Serie A, and Ligue 1, and then Champions League, Europa League across the last year. So he sits very, very well against in an awful lot of those stats. The sort of the key, I think, and where you've not had sort of anything really from Burn this season is that middle ground of passing and creativity. If you've got an awful lot there where it's progressive passes forward, it's movements forward, it's goal creating actions, crosses as well. It's so much higher than you've been getting, and would be comparable then to what you're getting from the right hand side. So that you can then have one go forward, one stay, or you play as some teams do, where you've got both fullbacks getting on. I mean, if you watch, was it Inter last night, or from the previous semi-final first leg, where the left back was getting forward and crossing to the right back and vice versa. And because they've got that in their locker, it gives you another outlet, somebody else to overlap as well. And you're just not getting that from the left back at the moment.
Just jump back a bit, Mark, because there's a few comments about the crosses from, is it Dan Burn, I think? He had quite a few crosses as Dan Burn, I think, on the previous slide there, was it? Oh, no, the cross is difference for Tierney, sorry.
Yeah, so it's 2.84 a game for Tierney, 0.48 a game for Dan Burn.
Yeah, so I did not mean to do me like that. I misread the comments. I hope Dan Burn doesn't find me and stand on me, because he really could do, because I'm that little compared to Dan Burn, to be fair. But Di, just getting your take on Tierney. What we'll try and do, we'll kind of quickly summarise these guys and say yay or nay for you. What do you think, Di? Would you take Tierney in? Would you be happy to see him in?
Yeah, mate. I will have a little tantrum about transfer chat at the end of the segment. But yeah, I absolutely do. I think ultimately the whole thing for me is about making steps forward. I never wanted to drop Dan Burn through the season. We talked about that because I don't think the replacement was a huge step forward. I do think Kieran Tierney is a big step forward. Someone in the comments has mentioned, Ash has mentioned that he is made of pipe cleaners and Scotch tape, and I do recognise that he is not the most reliable. I also do think there's some players, and when we talk about transfers, I've got a few people I'll suggest myself who become fitter when they play more, who are more reliable. I think when you've got people who dip in and out, those injuries happen to them more often and more regularly. And I think if they're playing all the time, I think their injury woes tend to disappear a little bit. For me, he's in that category. I spot on agree with Roger. I think he would be a great signing for us. And the thing would be the cost. I don't know how much he would be, and I don't think we can afford to spend a huge amount of money this summer on a left back. For me, a holding midfielder is our absolute priority. Possibly even two of them, but we'll come to that.
Yeah.
I know.
We'll get there in a minute. So just for you, Mark, is it a yay for you? I think Ash is right. It's 30 million quid, which is a lot of money for a kid who's been injured as much as he has. He's got loads of experience, but he has had a few injuries. What do you think, Mark? Grimaldo's been mentioned, but I think Ash is saying he's going to Leverkusen. What do you think?
I think, look, fit Kieran Tierney, absolutely. He's an exceptional fullback. The worry is the amount of time he's sort of had on the field. He's been fit this season. He's just not played. Obviously, with the signing of Zinchenko, it was never going to happen. If he stays fit now, probably 30 million is probably a bargain for him. I think it's an awful lot of money as a risk for his injury record, but he will give you production. He will give you a much more balanced sort of defense and a much more balanced sort of attacking from fullback as well. I think he would be a good signing.
One more from you, Dai, on Tierney?
Yeah, just very briefly. I think if we're talking about 30 million, I think it's only worthwhile depending on how much of our budget that is. If we've got a budget of 200 million, let's say, then I'm not so sure. If we've got more to spend, let's say, because we get to the Champions League, then I think yes, that's a worthwhile a gap to plug. But I think we've just got to be careful here. I don't think we need to be. I think 30 million is a lot for a left back.
Yeah, you're right. And there is other areas that are probably more key, to be honest with you. I mean, moving on to the next one, which I'll get Mark to jump in with this one. So there has been a talk of signing a right-sided centre-half to obviously challenge Fabian Schär, who's been brilliant this season, has to be said, in that kind of defensive partnership with Sven Botman. This lad has come up, Mark, Jean-Claire, is it Todibo? You know a bit about him. I saw clips of him. He looks lightning fast. We had a little chat before we come on air about it. Tell us a little bit about this lad, mate, and how would you see him fitting in terms of that three, Botman, Schär, and Todibo possibly?
I mean, he almost seems like the perfect replacement now for Fabian Schär. He's got the 31. Ash, yes, I'd agree. He's a terrific player. He's the right age for this. He's got plenty of time to ahead of him. He's playing plenty of games in Ligue 1 and he's performing well. You can see the levels. Like, it's a different league. I know this is difficult when you're comparing Ligue 1 to the Premier League, but you can only go with the numbers that you've got in front of you. So it's what I do like is that he's good on the ball. Specifically, when you look at the passes, the pass completion and progressive passes against Fabian Schär, there he's better in that regard. Interestingly, he doesn't carry the ball forward as much.
Oh, Mark's gone. Just while you're choking to death, Mark, if you could explain to me, I'm sure Dai's dying to know as well, just as you cough a lung up, what is a true tackle? I love a true tackle. If you're going to tackle anybody, you better tackle true.
So true tackles are based on outcomes rather than just a tackle or a tackle won. It doesn't really give any context to it. So a true tackle is based on the number of tackles made, the number of tackles then that you lose. It takes those into account, and the number of fouls you give away too. So it gives you a percentage. So if you look at Todibo, for example, bear with us one sec because I'll need to just jump out into his.
Just while you're looking, I love the fact that Lee says knows nothing about him, and the mere thought of Simon telling them off is scaring him, which I do love. So Simon is here in spirit. Just a point while you're looking for that, Mark, as well. There is one thing that stands out to me, and the kid does not win a lot of headers. Now, Ash is saying he's 6'3", but he appears to jump 4'7". So how does he not win as many headers when he's that much of a unit? That worries me a bit.
It's more based on the number of headers that he's actually involved in rather than that. Right. So his number seems really low, but he's only involved in just under 2 headers a game, whereas Fabian Schär is more about 4.5. So he wins over 53% of his headers per game. So the number seems really low, but it's just the number that he's involved in. I've probably used the wrong number in that regard because it doesn't really give a true reflection. So there is that.
Just while you're looking, we'll get Dai's take. Dai, do you know much about Todibo, mate? Is there somebody who's come across your radar?
I know a reasonable amount about him just because Aaron Ramsey plays in that team. So I've kept an eye out for Nice. Nice have got the second best defensive record in Ligue 1. And I know people kind of joke about Ligue 1 being a farmers league. It really, really isn't. And I think you can look at Bruno coming across and being the person that
Botman and Botman too.
Yeah, perfect examples. And as just someone just flashed up in the comments there, you don't need to be winning tackles to the high stats are all relative. For me, I think he's the exact sort of person. I hadn't thought about him actually, but he is the exact sort of person I think we need in terms of his competitiveness. The pace is the big thing. We have to have a quicker centre half. I love Fabian there. And I've got a lot of time for Botman. I think the man's an absolute monster, but he's not quick. And I think that is the one big thing we're lacking. I have an alternative suggestion as well. I'm sure we'll come to these things in the future, but I think he would be a great signing. I think it says a lot that when you look at the teams who are competing at the top of Ligue 1, that Nice, who are like 11th in the league, I think, so not having a great season, have still got the second best defence in the division, and I think that says quite a lot.
Well, with pace, just while Mark's getting his info loaded up there, I watched the lads highlight reel as you do, and I saw this kid catch Kylian Mbappe when he was about 6 yards behind him, and he caught him and wiped him out with a tackle. And I thought anybody who could do that is definitely worth a look at. If you can catch Mbappe who's 6 yards ahead of you with a clean pair of heels, fair play to the lad, mate.
No, spot on, mate. I think that is the one big thing. I think that's the big thing that doesn't go for Burn as well. Is lack of pace exposes us massively. Even moving forward, Trippier, I think, is not the quickest.
He can get caught.
Yeah, I think that's the thing we've got to look at. That's a much more longer term decision. But I think at left back and centre half, needing more pace is the key.
Another one who's 39 million. But I think with that one, Mark, that's probably worth the investment, I think, for 23. As you say, dire bargain. I think 39 million quid for this lad is worth it.
Yeah, I completely agree there. Look, going on to the come back to the true tackles thing. So if you look at purely tackles won or tackles won divided by the number of tackles. So Shares 50.7 in his number of tackles, percentage of tackles won. Todibo is 65.4, but that doesn't take into account tackles where you've committed a foul or tackles lost. It is just purely on number of tackles and tackles won. So that true tackle gives you a much fairer reflection of the outcome of tackles. And it's interesting that both of them really are really close to their actual sort of their other number. So that the percentage of tackles won. But the number for obviously Todibo is much higher than Share. Again, different league, different styles. But I think overall, you come back to the slide on here. I mean, look at, I know we get the comments all the time. Look at the greens, and again, look at the number of those high numbers in terms of passing, keeping the ball, and it's exactly what Newcastle need to do: feeding the ball through the midfield. His distance that he does carry the ball with, so he doesn't carry it as much as Fabian Schär, but he does carry it further. He's in the high numbers for recoveries as well. Doesn't commit an awful lot of fouls. The numbers in terms of errors are a little bit lower, but the number of errors are really minimal across the board. So you only have to have one, and you just drop an awful lot down the percentage points. So
I will say that in the Premier League, the aerials does, and I get that it's a statistic that does concern me a bit. I would also say that the dispossessed and errors, given how we play, does concern me a little bit. But I think we've got to be realistic here. We're not going to sign the next Nesta. I think we've got to find someone and tune them up as Eddie has done with lots of different players. So I think he's fantastic. He'd be fantastic, right?
Definitely. Mark, it's FB Ref. You get these stats, isn't it, mate? Yeah, it is. I thought it was. Yeah. So there you go. Champions League we go. And just a comment there from Conrad, Ivan Tony, just kind of 8-month ban, Sky Sports 1 hour ago. What are the odds? But I didn't see that way. I did see that. Sorry, I couldn't resist that one. I had to get that one in there. So I'm so glad we didn't sign him, to be fair. But just a quick one on Todibo, lads. I think it's going to be a full house. Yay or nay for the boy?
Yeah.
Yeah, 100%. Definitely. I would absolutely agree with that. So moving into the defensive midfield, which is a massive position. Pulling up the next player, we'll come to you on this one first, Di. You've been massive about this position, as I have, as everyone has. This is where we really, really struggle. Now, this lad's name will not go away. It's Kefran Turam, again, another Ligue 1 player, Marcus Thuram's brother, Lilian Thuram's son. He's done well with Lilian Thuram. To be fair, not only was he a good player, he's pumped out a couple of good players himself, hasn't he? But this boy is a very, very good defensive midfielder, athletic, very much kind of like what you would expect from that old Vieira type mold in terms of the the long legs, getting around the pitch and everything else. What do you think about this lad, Di? Do you know a little bit about him as well, being someone who checks out Ligue 1?
Yeah, a little bit. Again, not loads, but through the Ramsey thing. I think he's a decent player. I'm going to preempt your final question early, but it's a no for me for him. I think if we're looking forward for Champions League football, I think we need
too inexperienced. You think?
Yeah, and I also think I get that we've got to have a few gambles and a few rolls of the dice here, but I also don't think he's a special player. And I think there are. I've got 3 other suggestions that I could go for. I think before I would be looking at people like him.
Who's your suggestions? Because Ash is saying this is his second choice. I'm keen to know who Ash's first choice is. Who's your 3? Who's your 3?
I'm keen to know who Ash's second choice is. I've got a little list for myself here. Martin Zubamendi, who plays for Real Sociedad. He's played for Spain. Obviously got a relationship possibly with Isaac. I think he would be a good signing. He's got great stats in the Spanish league this season. He's playing very, very well. Obviously, again, having played for Spain, he plays at the base of their midfield, which is obviously includes Mikel Merino. He would be on my list.
Yes, great shout.
I'd be looking at, and I have to, as is tradition, I had to get a Welsh person in here. But I
Joe Allen.
I didn't. You might have heard of him. He's called Gareth Bale.
I'll take him. Can he play defensive midfield as well? No, that man talent.
The boy can play wherever you want him to. Is Ethan Ampadu, and I've mentioned him before here. I think he might get overlooked because he's played at the bottom end of Serie A. For the last 2 teams he's been on loan at, Venezia and Spezia, but he is an exceptional footballer. He's so quick, he's so strong, his passing range is outrageous. He's physical, he's competitive, he's a young lad. I would get him in. He can play centre half as well, and he would be a damn sight cheaper than a lot of the people we're talking about. Eddie can definitely get a lot out of him. I think he's played something like 40 times for Wales. And I think he's 22 years old. I think he's a fantastic footballer. Wow. I would definitely get him in. I think he's the future for Welsh football in my mind. And I know that's not what we're here for, but I think he would be someone who could really make a big difference for us in terms of how we play, because we keep getting caught on turnovers without the ball. It happens so often against Leeds, and he is someone who will just sit there and go and kick the shit out of people. And I've got a lot of time for that. And I think he's someone I really, really rate and really, really fancy. And I think he would do really well for us, given the quality and the energy and the passing ability around him.
Yeah, a man after my own heart. I like that type of player. And Ash rates Ampadu as well. Ash was talking about Manuel Ugarte was his player. And he's just saying there, Mark, some bits on Ugarte, which we haven't got on the list here, but 55 million quid release clause. Top 1% for tackles and 2% for interceptions in the top 5 European leagues. He is a player, Ugarte, so maybe it's somebody the club might look at, Mark. But going back to Thuram, Di's obviously give his opinion on it, mate. For you, yes or no?
It's one of those halfway ones where
I'm going to say maybe. You shit.
Yeah, I'm going to sit on the fence.
Are we going back to Oasis references here? I said maybe.
I agree. I think Ugarte is the much better option.
Yeah,
I think he's a phenomenal. To be honest with you, I'm just trying to see if I can get his stats up as well, because I didn't include them, but we did have them from when we did a Rumour Has It video.
We did, yeah,
a little while ago with it. But I think you're right. Thuram is young enough to come in and learn. I think Di hit the nail on the head. For me, he's not special enough in this regard to come in and do this job. So I think it would have to be a no from me.
Yeah, but don't worry about Villa Ugarte. They're shit. He's not going to go there, mate. He's not going to go there. Sorry, I couldn't resist that one. I'm very mischievous today. It must be the green tea.
Sorry, Mark.
Yeah, look, looking at the stats there for Thuram. I'm only joking. Look at the stats for Thuram. Yeah, there is a few yellows in there, Mark. So it kind of backs up, what we're saying. I mean, I think with Thuram, you're probably buying more potential in terms of the ready-made article. It's a gamble. He's a young boy, but he could end up being something special, or he could end up just being fairly average. I like where Gibbo's going with this. Alvarez, Ajax is always a player that I like the looks of, a real mean bastard. Yep. 43 million quid. Gibbo was saying, Man U was sniffing around him as well, apparently. But I think we can offer a more exciting project than Manchester United at the minute, unless this takeover goes through and everything else at their side of it. But what were you saying about Alvarez? He did the old.
He's overrated. He's absolutely overrated. Yeah, not for me.
As you're based over in the Netherlands, you give a great perspective on these players.
I do watch a lot of Dutch football. I think he's a decent player, but the money we're talking about, 43 million, I think we can do better than that. I think everyone hates Ajax as well. We don't want an Ajax player. No, I don't.
I wouldn't have minded Suarez when he was there, mate. I must admit.
No, do you know what? That would be the exception. I'll give you that one. Yeah. But the one other one I would go for, and Lee has literally just stolen it from me, is rescue Callum Phillips. I totally agree. I think he would be my third one. I don't think it cost us a load of money. I think he'd be desperate to come and play Champions League football. I think he would be a big improvement for us, because the big thing for us, I think, is we've got to make progress. And even if he doesn't start necessarily, it'd be such a big boost for our squad. The people would be able to get rid of, because he could come in and make an impact. Would be absolutely fantastic. So Calvin Phillips was the third one I was going to mention.
Great show. Great comment from Simon May there. We are way better than TalkSport, mate. We've proven that in the first 48 minutes of this channel, this episode. So thank you very much for that, mate. I'm just laughing at the fact that George has managed to scran his pie and he's back. His pornographic pie. There's them comments coming back up, Mark. Here come the sex bots. I'm glad to see George is back in the house after he's got a belly full of pie. But yeah, I mean, I think you're right, guys. To round one, again, you are paying for potential rather than kind of what's there right now. Another player, Mark, come back to you on this one, that we mentioned, I think probably after we played against them as well, was Romeo Lavia, wasn't it? The Southampton defensive midfielder. He looked quite tidy against us, I must admit. I was quite impressed with how he played. He's only 19 years old. Again, he probably doesn't excite you in terms of a Champions League player, but we're going to need a bigger squad for league and for cups and stuff like that. And the fact that Southampton have gone down, we might get this kid for a snip, Mark. I mean, what do you think?
Yeah, look, again, a little bit like Thuram. He's not one that really excites you, but he's got a few more years on him that you can bring in and really teach him to play that position in those games and give him the experience in those sort of games. So he's a very tidy player. Again, stats-wise, he's not going to blow the doors off. His number in terms of creativity and passing, that sort of thing, aren't the best. They're not dreadful, but he's certainly a player you can work with. His defensive stats are excellent, but I'll counter that by saying you'd expect that from a side at the bottom of the league. You expect him to be putting in lots of tackles, getting lots of clearances, that sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, it's just one of them we kind of threw in there as well. Maybe the club will look at it. Maybe they won't. Another player there, speaking of Southampton, sticking to them, is James Ward-Prowse. Now, Southampton are relegated. We've spoken about James Ward-Prowse before. They've come. I pretty much think they've assigned themselves to the fact that he's going. Trippier had that little mischievous slip, didn't he, and said, well, when he's on the free kicks and corners next year, I'll be off of it and stuff like that. And there might be a little bit of something in there. Ward-Prowse, for you, personally for me, right, before you give me a take on it, I think this player gets a lot of shit unnecessarily. I think he does a lot more than just take free kicks and corners. I think he works his nuts off on the park. He really does. He's quite long staff, like in that possible way. You can see from his interceptions, his recoveries there as well. His kind of progressive passes as well. And just quickly looking at the 90 there, you can see this is a guy on a relegation side. And that they're pretty decent stats in terms of what he's doing, trying to make something happen with a bunch of players around him that aren't very good. But he always gets labelled as this. He only takes free kicks and corners. For you, James Ward-Prowse, if he's available for 25 million, yay or nay?
I think it's a difficult one. I think looking at the stats here, assists, He's got less than Bruno, and I appreciate in a struggling team. It's a difficult one. 12 months ago, I would have said yes, but I really think that if we're going to spend 25 million on someone, he's on the wrong side of the age range that we're looking at. I agree with Ash. I think he is underrated, but is he like Champions League quality? Because that's where we want to go.
Probably not.
And I don't think he is. So I think if we're spending 25 million on someone, if that's what the number is, I'd be looking elsewhere. And again, Welsh bias aside, if the offer is 25 million for him, or probably 15 or so for Ethan Ampadu, I would be buying Ethan Ampadu every day of the week, month, and year. And I take nothing away from James Ward-Prowse. He's a very good football player. But as someone's mentioned in the comments there, Lee again.
Lee go West Ham.
Yeah, that's perfect, because I think Rice will go somewhere in the summer, and
Definitely.
I think that they will need a replacement. And I think that's a perfect thing. I don't think he's good enough to play Champions League football.
Yeah, I'll be quite glad when Rice goes, because we won't hear that shit packet of rice joke that they say on Sky Sports now, which just winds me up no end. They'll be the next ones for the rants, I'm sure. Mark, just quickly on James Ward-Prowse before we move on. Yeah or nay for you, mate?
No.
Maybe again. Could you shit out? You're terrible.
I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no, because I don't think he's Champions League quality. If you're going to make Champions League, he's not Champions League quality. Is he a better player in the role that you have on that, perhaps that right hand side of a midfield three? Is he a better player than Sean Longstaff in that? Yes, he will give you more in terms of his ability from dead balls, that sort of thing. But is he a better workhorse? Is he a better overall midfielder for that role? I'm not sure he is, and therefore I'd rather spend that 25 million on going for somebody like Ugarte, somebody to play in that role, or use that money somewhere else. I just don't think he's a player that is going to give you enough upside for long enough as well. And Di's right, he's 28. Yes, he's got a few years ahead of him, but if you are hitting Champions League now, he's not the right player. Yeah, I must admit, I agree with Raging Phoenix's comment that we do need some more Champions League players. So I'm going to move into the attacking berth here, because we've been on for quite a bit. So I don't want to be. I was just going to say before you do, because I know that the lads mentioned Ugarte before. These are the stats that we did for Ugarte. Okay. So you look at his defensive stats, absolutely insane.
Unbelievable, those defensive stats.
His passing stats are really, really good too. His sort of creativity isn't all there, but from that defensive midfield point of view, you're not going to get that. Up against Bruno, you see where that lies. Again, you're looking at this and you're going, he's playing in the Premier Liga. It's a different league. There are very few really top quality sides in that league, but he does stack up well. So again, young, you're going to bring him in and he's got the world ahead of him.
Look at that.
Very good. Very good.
My green tea is nearly dead. That's how long we've been on for, Rash. That's why I moved on to the attackers, mate, before it runs out. I'll have to go get myself a mineral water or something else, mate. Who knows? But so moving at the attacking front, exactly. I'm on a health kick. I'm trying to watch what I'm doing. So moving at the attack. I say what I'm trying being not a bit of word. Moving at the attacking berth. So talking about Champions League ready players. I mean, I'm going to start with this lad, Mark, because he's been linked so many times. We're in from, we're not in from, we're in from, we're not in from. Arsenal are in from, we're in from, everyone else is in from. So it's Moussa Diaby. He's obviously played Champions League football with Leverkusen. We've spoke about him, till we're blue in the face. The boy's lightning quick. You can see there, 23 years old versus, what Miggy brings. He totally, eclipses everything that Miggy is doing, even though Miggy's had the season of his life, exception of goals. But Diaby started slow in the season. He actually had a much better goal return last season, much more assists than Miggy, as you can see there, in terms of his, his shots and his XG and his assists. His assists are much higher than Miggy's. His pass completion's just a little bit under. But when you look at the boys' stats per 90 minutes as well, you can see kind of what he's doing there. You're a bit with the Bundesliga, Mark. You're a little bit funny with it. Some players stand out in the Bundesliga, come in the Premier League, and maybe don't do as well. I'm not sure this lad would fit in that category. I think this kid would be unbelievable. But the money that Leverkusen have been talking about would probably spunk most of our budget. It's 60 million quid. Are we really going to drop that on this kid?
He's worth it.
He's a yes for me. As Simon Cowell would say, he's a yes for me, 100%. So yeah,
he's brilliant. And again, the production that you get out of him, even if you factor in the fact that we've talked about the Bundesliga thing before, where there are a couple of players that have come into the Premier League from the Bundesliga and just really not set the world alight. But there's so much out of him. He's so good going forward. He can play across that midfield, that attacking sort of trio. We've seen the other day against was it the Europa where he's moving from left to right. He's running through the middle. He's got so much pace. He's so creative. He's so good in front of goal. He gives you what you want production wise from wide. I just think, if you've got the money to be able to go and pay it for him, go and pay it for him. Bring him in. Definitely. Yes, I'm not sitting on the fence.
Yeah, Dai, for you, would you go for that? Would you fancy a bit of that Part X Miyabi? Miyabi? Who's Miyabi? Maxi for Diaby? It's like a blended player there.
He's clearly a very good player.
Yeah.
He's quick, he's dynamic. Obviously hasn't scored as many goals as Miggy this year, but I think it'd be a great signing. I think, and yes, Ash, I do have a mini fridge. I mean, this is my bar. I will do this tour another day, but I've got a little bar room in my house.
We'll put it on as a short. We'll put it as a short of the channel. Dai's bar.
I think the way I kind of look at this whole situation is I think there are areas of our bench that we need to fill up. And I think that involves getting rid of people like Matt Ritchie, getting rid of people like Manquillo, Kraft, Lascelles, etc., etc., etc. And yes, he is not Welsh, but he has got a lovely red shirt on in the picture, which I like.
Give me.
My thing here is that we need to fill up our bench, and how that kind of manifests itself in terms of switching things around is someone else's to decide. But I think as things stand, we have some good wingers. We have some good wide players who are being productive, who are pressing, who are being attacking. For me, if I'm going to spend 60 million on someone, I'm going to be honest, it's not for me. I think he's a very good footballer, and I'm not doubting his quality. I'm saying that I think we've got 4 talented wingers, and I think there are other areas we need to do more improving on in terms of strength and depth and quality, and improving our first team and everything else. So for me, 60 million is too much for someone when I think we need improvement elsewhere.
But what about if Maxi was to go? Would that change the dynamic if Diaby comes in then?
A little bit. I think it would depend on the money we got for Maxi, and it would depend on the money that we could get this fella in for. I think then it would change things a little bit. But I think principally the long and short of the situation for me is we need at least 2 midfielders. I think we need a left back who's real quality, and I think we need a centre half who's top quality. And I think those things are kind of lacking for me. So if we could get this as a bonus, then sure. But I would not prioritize spending a big chunk of our transfer budget on him, if I'm honest.
Yeah. So, sorry about my disappearance there. There was some really creepy, weird bloke laughing outside my window. It sounded like a Jack in the Box. You know, the ones that pop out and go like, like that. It was very off-putting. So I had to shut the window sharpish and check the locks on the doors in case he had a knife. So very scary.
Apologies, mate. I'll stay at home next time.
I was going to say, he's drinking some weird Battenberger beer as well. I don't know what he's doing.
Battenberger?
I don't know, man. I can't remember what you said. It was long ago. And I've just thrown some bacon out, George, and distracted him while I checked all the locks, mate. That's what it was. But yeah, so yeah, we're all kind of a little bit on the fence about Diaby. You know, in terms of, I mean, Mark said obviously we'll have him, but it all just depends really on what the plans are. Great comment from Conrad that will take us into this next one. That obviously we did see Dan Ashworth at the Liverpool game. Why was he there? Was he looking at this lad? So this lad has never gone away from the radar of Newcastle United. We'll get through this one quick, so I want to cover Brighton before we finish. We've talked about James Maddison. We all know what James Maddison can bring. He didn't really bring it in that game. He was pretty shit, really. He had a couple of moments in that game, but he's not been great probably in the last few weeks for Leicester, but neither have anyone from Leicester. They've all really taken, the intensity out of their game. I wouldn't say down tools, but I think a lot of those players look like they know they're going down. There's no fight in there. It was similar when we had, when we went down, we saw Wijnaldum to Liverpool and Sissoko to Spurs. And those two players should have been someone that kept us up, and they didn't. And I feel that Maddison and Tielemans and Barnes and these types of players are almost doing the same thing. But real quick for Maddison, it's a weird one because I would say yes, but me and Mark had a chat about this. Mark, just to get your take on this again, and we'll get Dies as well. Does Maddison fit into how we play? And I'm starting to wonder, does he?
I'm not sure he does. I think he'd be a wonderful signing. Don't get me wrong. I think
Definitely,
he's a brilliant footballer. I think it's an odd one with the way Leicester have been, because the players there that you want to give their all for a team that's fighting against relegation, but there are players on that side that they know they're going to be all right. I saw this comment from somebody. It may have been from somebody on TalkSport, and I didn't hear it.
Watching that, it was a quote. Listen to that.
It was a quote I read earlier on, and I sort of get it. There are players on that side that won't care that much because they know they're going to move to another Premier League side next season. Maddison being one of them, he'll walk into another Premier League team. Yeah. So there's that element, but look, he's exceptional. He's got 30 goals in his last 3 seasons. He's got, 30 goals and 22 assists in his last 3 Premier League seasons. That's a heck of a return. You bring that into that side as well for Newcastle, and you get return out of him. But the way Newcastle play, I'm really starting to think, like you, I'm not sure he fits. And I also think, as one of the comments from Richard in there, that staying down south, I think he does. I think he probably moves somewhere like Spurs, and he moves to London.
Does he fancy a bit of London? 50 Shades of Sports. Love that name. If you're new, please subscribe. We love a bit of that. And John saying Maddison's critical attitude won't fit in Newcastle. There is a little bit of that as well. As Roger says, he can't disagree with me. The quality would be a huge improvement in our squad, but we don't play with a 10. So just I suppose looking at Maddison there, 10 goals, 9 assists in a crap team again is good. Quick glance over the 90, his goals and his shots per game, and his assists is decent. His crossing as well. He's very good from set pieces. Just quickly for you, Di, yeah or nay?
No.
I don't think so.
The money, we don't play with a 10. I think he's a decent player. I think he's a very good player. I think it would cost us a lot of money. I think we'd have to change how we played to get him involved. And I don't see how doing that. How said this week that we need to find people who can fit into the way we play. Maddison doesn't do that. Also, he wouldn't be a replacement for Almiron. Sorry, George. He wouldn't play out wide. If we bought him and then played him out wide, we may as well have Steve Bruce in charge. It's pointless. He's a number 10. We play him in his best position.
I'm starting to feel ill now, Lee. If you're still in the comments, I'm starting.
But it's true, because that's how we play, and I think he would. If we changed how we play to incorporate him, then I think that becomes a different question. But I think as we stand, and I don't see how doing that, I think we'd spend a lot of money on someone we'd try and shoehorn in, and it's a no from me.
Well, just on the last transfer target before moving to the Brighton game, it's not the one that you think, Nico Williams. I had to come to you with this one, Di. It's not the Nico Williams you think it is, but you were getting excited for a moment there.
I was gutted when I first read that.
Di was ready. He was going to get the Welsh flags out. It's Nico Williams from Atletico Bilbao, who's a young lad, 20-year-old. He's kind of a striker stroke winger, light and fast, no doubt about that. The kid has pace to burn. You look at his kind of comparisons to Miggy, not as many goals, but more assists. He's played a lot of games in La Liga. His passing completion is a little bit under Miggy's as well. Quick glance at his kind of per 90. So yeah, his goals and his XG and shots aren't great, but his take-ons are really good. So he likes to beat the man when you've got that kind of pace. You can do. His progressive passes is very good as well, and his touches in the box and his carries in the box are quite strong. For you, Di, do you know much about this Nico Williams as opposed to the one you thought it was?
The one I prefer? No. Nico, if we are going to get a winger and spend money, he's the one 100%. I think it'd be
there's
cheaper.
One for you, Di, as well.
I was going to say, Wayne has ruined what I was about to say now, you bastard. Nico is a very, very good football player, and if we were going to spend big money on someone, 100%, I would go for him. I think he's dynamic, he's quick. Miggy's big thing is, I know he's had a great one-off season, but he's we need our wide players to contribute assists as much as we do goals, and Miggy doesn't do that. And I think Nico Williams would do that. But unfortunately, Wayne has said what I was going to say. If we're spending money, I think I would get Brennan Johnson. He can play either side of the three, through the centre, out wide. He's dynamic, he's quick, he's fast, he's Welsh. What more do you want?
No, I do not want João Felix, Kevin. Absolutely
No.
not. I do not want.
And I will say also, Brennan Johnson, whether they stay up or not, he would be a damn sight cheaper than Nico Williams, and I don't think he'd be any worse a football player. You can clip this if you want, Mark, because I've had a few beers. But Brennan Johnson is going right to the top of football. I'm telling you, that boy is absolute different gravy.
I'm getting Harry Redknapp flashbacks here. Right to the top. Right to the top. Sean's with you as well. Yeah, definitely Brennan Johnson, that as well. Just a quick one on the wingers there. Richardson, Kulusevski. Not a bad show. I'd maybe take him too.
He's got a cheap buyout clause, I think, as well, relatively speaking. So I think it'll be good.
Just real quick for you, Mark, on Nico Williams before we move on. Yay or nay?
Yeah, I think again another one. He's got plenty of time. He's productive now. He'll get better. He would be an exceptional signing. I sort of agree. Brennan Johnson, I think, would be a terrific signing, and not to stay with the little bit of Welsh that I have in my family history. But yeah, he's a tremendous player, and I think, yeah, I've got to agree there. I think I would go down that route.
You've got like 50 shades of heritage, you, Mark. You've got a bit of something from somewhere all over your family tree, mate. There's no doubt about that.
Hines, I think,
it's the most Geordie Scotsman I've ever heard.
Yeah, exactly.
We to fuck you. Right, I won't do that again. So yeah, we can just say that 50 Shades of saying, why don't I want Felix? He's unreal. I just think he's a bit of a mercenary shithouse, to be honest with you, the way he's behaved with this move to Chelsea and everything else, and flirt with the teams. I think his attitude's all wrong. 50, I really do. Richard,
he's hardly set the world alight either, has he? Really?
He's not been that great, is he? Really? Yeah. Johnson's great, cool. And he looks like a bass guitarist from the Strokes or something. I'm not into all that. He just looks like a little fucking knob. So something about him just winds me up, like he owes me a £5 or something like that. So just moving on to the last category for today, because we've been on a bit longer than we normally are. So yeah, Brighton. The Brighton game is massive, absolutely huge. Mark, just coming to you quickly on this one. We've already mentioned a little bit about it earlier on there. Obviously, St James's Park under the lights. You know, these two home games are key to win Champions League. There's been some talk there in the comments from the likes of Roger saying that maybe Murphy's unfit and Anderson might come in or whatever. How do you feel we're going to cope with this game? And do you think it's going to be one of those huge, nights we've had all season, like Southampton in the Cup and things like that, when we need to win? Leicester as well, when Burns scored that belter goal. Do you think it's going to be something like that again? And do you think we're going to get the job done?
Yes, I think so. I think the way that Newcastle can come out of the traps early on with a crowd behind them, get on top, force Brighton into then trying to get back into the game, opens the door, and I think that massively plays into Newcastle's hands. They can then go on and maybe get a couple of goals and put the game to bed. I generally think I love watching Brighton. I think they're great, but I do think you are able to get at them if you can get them early, and you can give them a little bit of a rattle. I think it's definitely one that Newcastle can go ahead and be confident going into to go and win. I'm not going to say they're going to steamroll them, but they could go in and win.
I haven't been murdered by Bruce. I was getting my phone on the other side of the room. I could hear it going off there, so I was just double checking it. So it was on my charging platform in the side room. I've not let him in this house. Di, just getting your take on the Brighton game. Again, we covered it earlier on. You kind of covered your take on it as well. You think the lads are going to get the job done, mate?
Yeah, I'm not fussed. I think we'll do them. I think they're a good football team, but I think we're a better football team. I think we've also gone through a spell of 2 games where we've not taken our chances or not quite been creative as we could be. For me, I think tomorrow's the day we're going to kind of click in and make a difference, and I think we can start booking our European trips tomorrow, I reckon.
Superb. I'd love that. I'd love that, Stephen, in the comments about Bruno's due a goal.
He's due a goal.
It It has been a while. Just this comment from Richard: you find it bizarre if Wilson and Isak start together, but what would you do? I'd rather not. I'd rather do what Lee said earlier on in terms of play Isak through the middle. And I think we mentioned that, Mark. I think Isak will start this game through the middle. And I think he'll either have Miggy and Maxi possibly either side. This could be a game potentially for Maxi to run it teams. But we did say on Monday, Mark, that maybe they'll say Maxi for Leicester. But looking at that, we have got some options. We have got some depth, that we never have had before. Yeah. And we've got pace on our side. We've got ability. There's a few lads who are due big performances. Joe Linton's probably due another big performance. He's been a bit below par probably for the last few weeks. So if Joe can have one of those games, then I think he would be absolutely superb. My head says and my heart says we're going to win this game. I think this is the first of the two that we need to win. So I'm going to go for a Newcastle win as well. I'm going to go, it'll be tight though. I'm going to go 2-1, I think. So I think Brighton will make it difficult. I think they've got some good players. They're in a good bit of form. They're buoyed with confidence from that Arsenal result as well. But yeah, I think the atmosphere and the lads, I think, will have a bit too much for them. And if we win this game and then on to Leicester on Monday, win that, I think Champions League is signed, sealed, and delivered. There's another song in there for you, Stevie Wonder would say. Right at the end. Hey, right at the end. See, it's the green team, mate. I just pull these. I'm like a human jukebox. Pull these up my head, mate. But listen, it's been a cracking episode, guys. Thank you so much to everybody who's jumped in the comments. We couldn't get through all the transfer talks, unfortunately, because we just ran a little bit out of time. But we'll have loads of rumour has it, Mark, won't we, over the summer? That's what we'll be doing to kind of fill a little bit of content as well. Anyone who's linked will be on doing a video and checking stats out. So jump on Evermore and make sure you check it out. As I said at the start, if you're new to the channel and you haven't subscribed, smash the button, come and join. There's loads of room for you here. The two just under Dai's beautiful beard there. There's 2 live shows, Mondays and the one you've just watched Wednesdays, and pop-up videos galore. I'll be back with a match preview for the Brighton game. And then obviously I'll be straight on for a post-match review tomorrow night, hopefully, after the Magpies have got 3 points against the Seagulls. So until then, guys, let's keep supporting that team. McCoy United dies off to eat something because he's had loads of beers and he's pissed out of his brain. And Mark is off to maybe have something stronger than a water. So until then, guys, we'll catch you later, everybody. Cheers, everyone. See you later. Bye-bye.